Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod, and we have a very special guest tonight, Dan Solomon. He's the president and chief Olympia officer. So he's the head of not only the Olympia competition, but also muscle and fitness. How you doing, Dan?
Hany, I'm really good. I was really excited to come on with you. In fact, I was so excited that I kind of upped my wardrobe game. So I want to walk you through this before we get started. I know you have a lot of questions planned. So the T-shirt that I'm wearing today says Rambod's Gym, and I wore that especially for you because you and I go back about 15 or so years, and for all those years we always had many things in common: a love of bodybuilding and other things. But we also had in common the fact that both of us owned dogs named Rambo, and of course both of them have long since gone to heaven. But so what I did was I built recently a gym at the house, and it came together really beautifully. I'm really proud of it. But my son and I decided to name our gym here at the house Rambo's Gym. And I wore this shirt for you because I know we always had that Rambo connection. So I thought you might appreciate that.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And what's funny is my dog's name was Rambod. And it was funny because and both of us had small dogs. They weren't very big dogs. And you'd think that everyone would think it's a pit bull or it's some kind of like Great Dane, Rambo, but mine was a Pomeranian and yours was like
A Maltese.
right. It was a Maltese. And it was funny because again, we have like these very small dogs and they're both called Rambo. So I think that was awesome.
So the jacket now, I'm wearing this because my folks over in merchandising who we work with to try to, we've actually done a lot with our Olympia merchandising line. And this just literally dropped today. It's a brand new bomber jacket. It comes in a few different colors. They just shipped it to my house today. I got it about 10 minutes ago. So I threw it on, and you guys can get it at MrOlympia.com. I promised that I would give a shameless plug for the new bomber jacket. It's all hand stitched and embroidered, and
that's super nice.
the folks in merchandising did a great job. So I'm wearing that to support the cause. But all right, Hany, it's your show. Take it away.
Actually, I do want to talk to you about merch for a second because I am seeing some different ads on the Olympia Instagram page where you guys are giving merch, you're doing merch where in the past that wasn't happening. So not only this, but all of those other things can be available. I mean, I'll put the link in the summary of the video because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be listening to this on iTunes or they're going to be on Spotify, but there's also people who are watching this on YouTube. So I'll go ahead and put the link on the YouTube link, but what colors does this bomber jacket come in? Because this is all an embroidered
like this olive green, a black, and a red. And it's funny because when I took over the Olympia, I guess it's almost 2 years ago now, there was no way for bodybuilding fans, Olympia fans, to order merchandise. You'd have to actually get on an airplane, fly to Vegas, and order apparel and shirts and the whole bit. And I thought it was really important because, look, bodybuilding fans, they like to give gifts and they like to, sort of represent the cause and wear the Olympia logo in the gym. So we went ahead and we created a whole line, and we're working with a great partner out there in Vegas, and they've done a great job. So we're glad that we were able to kind of get that going. So
awesome.
That's off and running.
Yeah, because a lot of people would always ask me, hey, could you go grab me these shirts and ship them to the Middle East or wherever, because you could only get these at the show. And now they're able to do that. So that's awesome that you've been able to expand that with the merch strategy. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because the brand is so important and how the Olympia has been the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. But I want to first start out with saying to you and Jake, thank you for still having the show, because I know this could have been a really easy cop out to say, hey, look, it's a bad year. This is we're going to go ahead and push this off to 2021. And not only have you tried to make a adjustment with putting it in a better place on the strip, but also you're still having it in general. And this has been a very fluid year. Can you tell me a little bit about the trials and tribulations through COVID and through everything else? Because I don't think a lot of people realize the logistics nightmare you're going through just to be able to have the show.
Yeah, it's been a daunting task. Putting the Olympia on in and of itself, it's a multi-venued event. It's a very complicated thing. But then you throw in putting on the Olympia in brand new venues, completely relocating the Olympia. There's a reason why the Olympia stayed in the same place for 15 years, because quite frankly, it's a major undertaking to move the entire thing to new venues, new convention centers, new theaters, new arenas, the whole thing. And then when you add into that the components associated with a global pandemic, it has taken a few years off of my life. I can tell you that. But Jake deserves a lot of credit because Jake acquired the event back in February. And he said from day one, he says, we want to do our part to make sure for the IFBB Pro League, for the athletes, this went far beyond just economics for Jake. This was about being able to make sure that the Super Bowl, the holy grail of our sport, continued, and that we were able to do something that we've done each year for the last 55 years, and that is crown the number one bodybuilder, fitness figure, bikini physique athletes in the world. And that was something that was incredibly important. We wanted to also honor the relationship that we have with Jim Mannion and his team to make sure that, remember, the entire sort of ecosystem of this whole model, it starts at the NPC and then it goes to the Pro League and then ultimately it ends on the Olympia stage. And we really felt a responsibility to make sure that we did our part to create opportunities for that to happen. And, right now we feel like we're on track, but, there's still some hoops to jump through, but we're proud to have been able to do it. We got a great team. Tamer Elgindi, Angelica, the entire crew have really just not slept a lot, but we're committed to making this happen one way or another.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Jake, because in the history of the Mr. Olympia, I believe it's going to be year 55 of the Mr. Olympia.
56 this year.
50, this year. So this year, next month, or in December, we should say, is going to be the 56th Olympia. So with year 56 coming up and 55 just going by last year, where do you see the Olympia? Because for many, many years under Joe and Ben Weider, and then it went over to AMI, and now basically it's changed hands this year. And, kudos to you and getting that deal done, because obviously nobody saw that coming. And it's bringing somebody in, Jake. If you can give a little history on Jake, and I'd love to get him on the show at some point too. But I think a lot of people don't know Jake. And I think that it's one of those things where the new owner of the Mr. Olympia competition, the brand and Muscle and Fitness, is somebody who's super passionate about the sport. So if you can go a little bit into that, because again, it was Joe and Ben, then it was AMI Corporation for almost 2 decades. And then now it's Jake Wood. So if you can give us a little bit of backstory on that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because Jake deserves to have a spotlight on him just for a moment, because you're correct. For the last 55 years, only 2 individuals have owned the Olympia, the Weider family, and then of course, American Media. And there wasn't really any indication that was going to change anytime soon. And a lot of folks felt that American Media, which of course is sort of the embodiment of a corporate structure. For those who don't know, American Media is one of the top magazine publishers in the world. They publish Us Weekly, The Inquirer, OK Magazine, a whole slate of very well-known magazines. And they, of course, acquired Muscle and Fitness and the Olympia and some of the other titles as well. And it was really an interesting thing, because while it grew under their watch, and I always say AMI deserves a lot of credit because there was a lot of growth during those years, at the same time, it also sort of lost to some degree some of its connection to the pulse, the real passion of the bodybuilding fan, of the nutrition companies, the apparel brands, the equipment manufacturers, the companies that we all work closely with. There was a bit of a disconnect. And I think we all wanted to sort of restore that passion. So then you asked me about Jake Wood. So along comes Jake, a guy who has been deeply passionate about the fitness and bodybuilding world really all his life. And he kind of came up by establishing a real connection to female bodybuilding. And this interest in female bodybuilding it's really something that I think is one of the more misunderstood things in our community. Jake has tremendous respect for the amount of work that these female bodybuilders go through and their dedication, their commitment, the way they inspire people. But I think he has some level of compassion towards the fact that as they go through all these sacrifices and they suffer, and I know you know what that's all about as a coach, they weren't really given their due, and contests were being canceled and opportunities were being lost. And it was just one of those things where the Miss International at the Arnold was canceled and the Miss Olympia was canceled. And Jake watched very closely and he said, you know what, these ladies, they work as hard as anybody. They're as dedicated as anybody. So as a result, they deserve those opportunities. So he created a company called Wings of Strength, which of course by now everybody knows about. And he created it just as a means to provide advocacy and support for these female bodybuilders and female bodybuilding competitions. And through that, the next step was to start supporting the events themselves. And then he started to actually produce these events and started working with other promoters, guys like Tim Gardner. And next thing you know it, you started to look at the overall contest calendar, and you saw quickly that Wings of Strength, Jake, was largely responsible for a pretty sizable percentage of contests that were going on across the entire schedule. Now, these were not just female bodybuilding competitions. These were events that had men's bodybuilding, fitness, figure, bikini, physique, and all of it. And Jake really kind of got behind it to the point where he became a central backbone and support component for the entire industry. And then I was called to take over the Olympia. And Jake, of course, is a longtime friend of mine. I've always appreciated he's very honest, he's very candid, he's very sincere, and he's deeply passionate about all of this. And I said to him, I'm thinking about taking this job. And I even asked him for his blessing and his input, because whenever I do something significant, I always try to reach out to the people who are close to me. I think you and I even had a conversation. And I remember he said to me, you know what, go take that job, bring the Olympia to a new level. And who knows, maybe if the stars align, perhaps one day I'll even consider acquiring it. So we had that conversation. Next thing you know, I take the job. And, we had a very successful year last year on many measures. The arena was packed. Jake was there. He was a big sponsor of the event with Wings of Strength. And he ended up coming away from that experience with such a level of invigoration and positivity that he, myself, and David Pecker, the CEO of American Media, we sat down. And next thing you know it, the topic of Jake acquiring the Olympia kind of entered the fray. And they spent several months having conversations, and it was an arduous, exhausting, intense process, and as it should be, because it's a significant acquisition. He acquired Muscle and Fitness and Flex and all those media brands. But
so he pretty much, Dan, got the whole package, right? So he basically,
that's right.
This was not pieced out in any way, shape, or form. So he got all of the media, and then he also got the contest as well.
He got the contest, and the contest was the thing that he wanted, because he feels that the Muscle and Fitness, that the Olympia brand and what the Olympia competition represents sort of is the pulse of the entire industry. And I think, a lot of us would agree. So that was something that he really wanted to acquire.
And he had the checkbook to do it as well. I mean, he comes from outside of the industry, and he has the means to be able to do something like this. And it sounds like his passion has been bodybuilding. I mean, obviously being involved with Tim Gardner and in the Wings of Strength, he's been actually part of the bodybuilding industry for quite some time.
That's right. He really has. In fact, it's funny because whenever Jake and I have conversations, sometimes I'll call Jake and I'll talk to him about the business of what we're doing, or a sponsor deal, or a licensing deal, or something that we're working on. And he'll spend about 5 seconds on that with me. And then he immediately goes to, how is this going to help the athletes? It's funny. It's very cliche in our industry to talk about athletes and to talk about how we want to create better experiences. And you hear a lot of people do it, right? And I think deep down, on some surface level, they mean it. But for Jake, the focus on the athletes and creating opportunities and visibility and advocacy for the athletes, it is by far the highest priority for him, even above revenue, beyond almost all components. The idea of making sure that our stage production is second to none, making sure that our visibility and that the way we cover the contest is second to none. Those are the things that he really cares about, making sure that athletes are given opportunities outside of bodybuilding and trying to work on ways to achieve that. I mean, those are the things that Jake talks about. And I will tell you, if you are an athlete in this sport, you should be very pleased by our new owner, because you're talking about somebody who spends almost every hour of every waking day thinking about ways to move the sport forward in ways that are going to benefit the athletes. That's very important to him.
Yeah. And I think that takes me to our next question. I think a lot of people are asking in passing, they say, hey, Hany, what do you think is going to happen? How do you think they're going to manage this? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what the vision is. And this is a perfect opportunity with this podcast, is to be able to discuss. There's a traditional approach, which David Pecker just took the traditional approach and kind of kept that same trajectory, it seemed like. And then there was a approach where we could think kind of more out of the box, especially with social media and everything else kind of being layered in. And is there anything in specifics that you can go into in regards to the evolution of the Olympia and branding and how those athletes are going to be able to get to another level of, I guess, branding and co-branding with the Olympia?
It's a good question, and it's something we talk about a lot. Obviously, the frustrations of being a part of a global pandemic have sort of slowed a lot of the things that we are hoping to do and that we will do in the future. For starters, the way we crafted our American media deal allowed us to continue to tap in and utilize those entertainment titles, the Us Weeklies, the tabloids, to continue to reach those audience. Everything, I always say this, I wake up every day and my entire focus beyond the overall logistics and production of the event and all that we do on that front is to figure out ways to tap into new audiences. It's extremely important. And a lot of the ways that we've done that is through celebrity. We've been very fortunate enough to get real support from folks like Mark Wahlberg and Shaquille O'Neal. And a lot of people say, well, what does Shaquille O'Neal have to do with bodybuilding, right? That's a fair question. But what people don't understand is, the only way that we're able to gain not even acceptance, because acceptance, I think, is a word we used to use. I think we've blown that out of the water. We're long past acceptance by now, because you know this, Hany, you work with some of the top athletes in the world outside of bodybuilding. So we're past acceptance, but in order to really get this thing to grow to the point where we have major car brands sponsoring our events and we have big time mainstream apparel brands involved with what we do, is to do our part to tap into those audiences. And Shaquille O'Neal, for example, owns many of the biggest corporations in the world. He's a world-renowned television analyst. He's an NBA Hall of Famer. He's so he covers from. He's even a well-known and very respected DJ, and he works with a lot of celebrities. So he's able to do his part to make sure that the folks in his world, which is much bigger than our world, are aware of bodybuilding, and he makes it a point to insert bodybuilding and fitness into the conversation. Mark Wahlberg, the same way. He just sent over a video talking about how excited he was for this year's Olympia, in terms of commenting on his experience from last year and how much he enjoyed it. And other celebrities are kind of following suit. So I think the celebrity component is a big part of what we're doing. And then we also have some sort of behind the scenes conversations with, agencies and then marketing companies and media consultants and other folks who have the ability to sort of bring our world to a larger audience. And it's something that we're going to start seeing really gain a lot of momentum, I think, once we get out of this current situation that we're in the world. But I'm very pleased with the initial pace of how things are going. And, even right down to the fact, think about this. Somebody once said to me, how do you feel about Dwayne Johnson contemplating putting on a fitness event? And, almost as if suggesting that I might feel threatened by it or that it might be a negative thing. But the reality is, it is the ultimate validator that we're doing the things that need to be done so that people like Dwayne Johnson and Shaquille O'Neal and others look at our world and say, I want to be a part of that. I want to tap into that audience. I want to promote that world. And the fact that they're doing that tells me that they're seeing what's happening here and they like what they're seeing and they're identifying the value of it and they want to be a part of it. There is no greater compliment that can be paid to somebody that does what I do or somebody that does what you do, Hany, than having a guy like Dwayne Johnson wanting to buy into this world and be a part of it. So I think we all have reason to feel pretty good about things right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're very passionate. That whole team is very passionate. Danny Garcia, Dave Renzi, all of them, they're all very passionate. Now they're both IFBB pros, and to even say that you're an IFBB pro is something that is, that's rarefied air to be around that. And I think that people are starting to realize, like you said, outside of our inner circle, what that means. What does it mean to be an NPC competitor? What does it mean to be an IFBB Pro League pro? What does it mean to actually compete on the Olympia stage? Because in the past, I don't think a lot of that was disseminated to the absolute masses. And now we have that ability through these different types of outlets that are, whether you want to call them famous or whether they're pro athletes. I mean, I saw Busta Rhymes had just posted a picture of him getting in shape and he's being, tagging Dexter and some of the other guys. And it's really cool to see. I mean, Dr. Dre's training really hard. All those guys, that are in even the hip hop space are getting their motivation through our industry. And
even pulling it back now, that's the exciting part. That's the part that everybody talks about. But what about at the grassroots level? Think about this. Years ago, when we kind of started doing this, if you knew somebody who was in this industry, it's because they were walking around with wide shoulders and wide lats and sweeping quads and tank tops, and they looked and acted like bodybuilders. Now, almost everybody knows somebody who competes, whether it's your dentist or your dental hygienist or the receptionist at the office building you walk into, or wherever you go. Somebody knows somebody whose neighbor competes in bikini or in men's physique. It seems like we've created all these new divisions to the credit of Jim Mannion and their team that sort of allow all shapes and sizes to have their rightful home in this space. And you're starting to see that now, where even when we had a local contest up the street the other day where I live here in South Florida, and it was a small local show. And I had calls from people, we always say we all live two lives, right? We have our fitness, bodybuilding life, and then we have our kind of our real world life. And people that I know I know from my son's school and just regular folks on the baseball field that my son plays baseball in, they would come up to me and they would say, "Hey, are you going to that bodybuilding show at the Marriott next week? Because my neighbors competed in it." And I thought, man, how gratifying is it? And how far have we come that those are the kind of conversations that we're starting to have?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a testament to everybody's hard work and being able to, like you said, the NPC, has been able to get a wider audience with having these different divisions. I mean, I'm looking forward to one of the big ones, which is wellness. Can you just touch on wellness? Are we going to have it this year at the Olympia? Because it looks like it's going to go into 2021, but I want you to go ahead and go into a little bit of detail on that.
Yeah, so wellness is starting to take flight this year. I know it's incredibly popular around the world, but the Olympia will welcome wellness in 2021, and you won't see it this year at the Olympia. But it's funny because at the elite level, especially, sometimes at the amateur level, it's hard for people to kind of get their arms around what wellness really is. And I always say when it comes to matters of articulating criteria for each division and all that, you're probably better at that than I am, Hany, because that's what you do. But I will tell you that we're very pleased by the initial response to it, at the amateur level. And of course, that's where it all starts. And you'll see it at the Olympia in 2021. But these world-class elite level wellness athletes, they have structures and proportions that are remarkable. Actually, they're extraordinary. And I think people are going to really get behind the division. So you'll see it in 2021 really start, I think, to take flight.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting because we get a whole new division, and every time there's a new division, it gives an outlet for those athletes. Again, wellness for a bigger lower body, and that more muscular lower body. So if you're a figure competitor and you want that thicker lower body, that's the division you're going to want to go in. But 2021, you heard it here, there will be a wellness Olympia champion going into 2021. Do you know, Dan, right now, do you know if any of the people who had done well or had done any of the shows are going to qualify for the 2021 Olympia from this year, or is that starting scratch next year?
I believe it starts with next year's qualification season. I do not believe that anything has occurred thus far that would qualify somebody for the 2021 Olympia, as far as I know, unless there's something at the Pro League office that would suggest otherwise. I have not heard anything that would suggest that.
Okay. So yeah, we're looking forward to that with everything else. And going into the Olympia for this year, the questions I've been getting, is there going to be an audience? Do you know if there's going to be an audience yet? Is that yet to be determined? These are some of the questions I've gotten from some fans.
So as of right now, we have every expectation of having an audience. The size of the audience will be dictated by state, local, hotel, various governmental authorities that are currently working through that process right now. And kind of we're standing by waiting to have some clarity on what that's going to look like. We, of course, have already put tickets on sale. We were told to put tickets on sale, VIP tickets, completely sold out. I can't even sell you a VIP ticket anymore. So, and it's a frustrating time because the truth is, we came to realize quickly that we will sell every ticket that we're allowed to sell. There's so much interest in this year's event for a lot of reasons. The first one is that people are just anxious to get out and go do something and kind of, come together as an industry and reconnect. And then the other thing is we happen to have what might be the greatest lineup we've had in a very long time. This is an extraordinary lineup, one that I know you have a rooting interest in, and we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But It's a very exciting time right now to be a fan of the Olympia. So we're hoping that we get some good news that allows us to kind of open things up. But, I have to be very careful with what I say because there are things that we are powerless to. So we have been advised to press forward, prepare, and we're hoping that a lot of people have talked about the presidential election and the impact that it may have on what we're allowed to do and what some of the political pressures might look like. And I don't really get into politics; it's not really my thing. But I have heard that it does seem to have some kind of an impact on some of the choices and some of the things that are being done on that front at the leadership and at the government level, the political level. So we'll see how that all plays. But right now, we're moving forward with the expectation that there will be an audience. The size of it, it's just a little too soon, I think, to know. We're hoping to have some clarity in the next week or two.
Do you know whether or not the actual athletes have to wear masks right now?
As of right now, we have no reason to believe that the athletes on stage will have to wear masks. But again, it's so easy for a state, local, or government official to come in and say otherwise. So we're trying real hard to not comment on what we think is going to happen because
Sure.
it's something, it becomes a matter of integrity too. Like, it's a frustrating thing to have to sit there and look into a camera and to talk about the things that we're expecting because there are elements that are beyond our control, and we want to make sure that we respect the community the right way and not say things that ultimately, we might prove to be powerless to. But right now, we're feeling like things are trending in the right direction, and we're hoping we get some good news pretty soon. But right now, we're just kind of waiting along with everybody else.
Was there any thought of ever of moving it to Florida, Dan?
Yeah, we kind of considered every scenario, to be honest. But when we had to make these choices back in sort of May, June at the latest, we were faced with all those scenarios. And keep in mind, we made the decision to move the event the latest possible weekend of the year. You can't put the event on later than the weekend we're putting it on because the weekend after is Christmas and the weekend after that's New Year's. So you can't do
Right.
that. We decided that the best statistical probability for success was to put the event on as far into the end of the year as we possibly could. And that's what we did. And the feeling was at that time, it was still 6-7 months out. So we felt pretty good. If I could go back in time, now that we know things that we know now, it's possible that we might have taken a different track. But I can tell you this, Jake acquired a Las Vegas-based event. That was one of the things that really appealed to Jake, and I think appeals to bodybuilding fans as well. There's a certain allure of the way Vegas kind of provides a nice home for our event. And we were really committed to honoring that and to trying to make that work. And we still are, and our fingers are crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that everybody's pivoted. I mean, the Chicago show was in Atlanta. Several shows had moved to Florida. The New York Pro had gotten moved there so that they had to pivot. And it's just a matter of necessity, and necessity is the mother of invention. So that's why I was wondering whether or not that was ever something talked about. But it sounds like it was talked about at some point. But it's one of those things where, pushing it later in the year definitely give you a lot more flexibility and hoping that you give you runway. The other thing I was going to ask you is when we get invites, people always ask whether or not, because Big Rammy comes to mind, and specifically, and I know this has been a subject that's there's both sides of the fence. Did he deserve an invite? Does he not? And again, I know what I believe in with this, but I think you could sum this up very eloquently about the invite process, because I think that certain people don't realize how many invites and who had already received an invite, i.e. Flex Lewis, versus, what ended up happening in your decision-making process in that. I think that a lot of the audience would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. So first of all, there's kind of a misnomer out there that we give out a lot of special invites, which could not be further from the truth. We give out very few. And in no year is there ever more than one special invite. So you'll have 175, 180 athletes in a show across all 8 or 9 divisions. And on occasion, we will give one invite. We do not give an invite every single year, but when we do, it's only one invite. Earlier this year, we extended a special invitation to Flex Lewis because Flex Lewis, as you know, despite his 7 victories in the 212 Olympia, that did not qualify him to compete for the Mr. Olympia title. So we decided to use our special invite on Flex. We thought it was an appropriate thing. We thought his contributions, his status, his achievements in the sport, coupled with the fan demand and the fact that we did not feel that it was necessarily appropriate to create a qualification situation for him to have to go do a smaller show. We thought it was the best for everyone to provide a special invite for the 7-time Olympia 212 champion to change divisions to compete in Mr. Olympia. Then, of course, Flex ended up running into some issues that prevented him from competing. So suddenly we had our special invitation back. And when Flex Lewis decided to opt out of the show for the reasons that he shared on his video, we suddenly found ourselves in a situation where we had an invite to work with. And then that very next weekend, the final events happened of the year, where the qualification schedule ended, and Big Ramy was 4th on the list of the point standings. The top 3 earned a spot. He was 4th. And a lot of people don't know this. So earlier in the year, Big Ramy got on an airplane and flew from Columbus, Ohio, all the way to Australia to compete in what was supposed to be the Arnold Classic Australia. And he flew all the way over there, 20-something hour flight, expecting to be able to compete, and he would probably have been one of the favorites to win that show, or certainly at the very least to gobble up all the points that he would have needed to qualify to secure that spot. And as it turned out, once he got over there, a lot of the COVID stuff kicked in, and the event was canceled. Not only was he denied the chance to compete in that show, a show that he thought he was going over there to compete in, he ended up getting stuck there for quite a while, and he was unable to return. So that was a real misfortune for Big Ramy. Then fast forward to later in the year when he was preparing to compete, and he was preparing to compete because I spoke to his coach, and that was something that was ongoing, and he was getting ready to compete. And as it turns out, he's about to go through customs or wherever you have to pass through to get on the airplane. And as it turned out, he failed his test. He then prevented the test results to us and to the Pro League office, and it was determined that he did in fact fail that test. So again, another really extenuating circumstance in the same year occurred for Ramy. Also worth mentioning that Big Ramy is a former Olympia runner-up. As you well know, Big Ramy pushed Phil Heath to the brink a couple years back.
Yep.
Big Ramy is a guy who has won his share of contests, so he has the accolades. So a good case can be made that the special invitation is as tailor-made for this set of circumstances as it has been for anybody. So that's why we decided. Now the process is the athlete has to request, for starters. A lot of times fans will come to us and say, hey, why don't you give so-and-so a special invitation? And I always say, they didn't ask for one. You got to ask for one before we're going to review it. And a lot of these athletes.
Are you referring to Kai Green?
Right, exactly. Kai Green's the perfect example. Hey, why don't you guys give Kai Green a special invitation? And we always say, well, Kai's got to ask for a special invitation before that conversation's even going to happen. But we ended up reviewing it.
But on the record, he has not requested an invitation for you to even turn him down.
In fact, I'll take it one step further. Not only has Kai Green not requested an invitation to compete in the competition, but most of my calls to Kai Green in which I want to talk to him about competing in the Olympia or discussing that scenario, many of those calls don't even get returned. So I can tell you there is no interest on the part of Kai Green to compete in the Olympia. So there will not be any talks of special invitations because he doesn't want one. He's not interested.
There you go. So for all those that keep asking or keep making statements like they won't let him compete or whatnot, you heard it here. Dan's reached out, hasn't heard back, and nor has there been an official, I would like to do an Olympia, give me an invite, please, I'm requesting this. Nothing like that.
Nope.
There you go. There you go. So going back to the Ramy situation, let me ask you this. If Flex Lewis was still in the show, would have Ramy gotten a second invite?
It's a great question. It would have posed a really challenging situation because we don't like to give out. We don't like to give those out. In fact, I'll even say something in Ramy's defense. Ramy didn't want the special invitation. Ramy, because we even talked to him about that scenario, like what would happen if we were to give a special invitation. He wanted to go compete in that competition and either get the points or win the show because he would have qualified easily, presumably. And he wanted to go do it. He did not want the I was invited moniker attached to him. He wanted to go and earn that qualification. In the end, he was unable to do so. But it's a great scenario. I don't know what would have happened. If we were a situation where we had already given Flex Lewis and he stayed in the show, and then Ramy requested one, we would have had a lot to talk about. I don't know if we would have given it to him or not.
Yeah, it would have been really good food for thought. But I think a lot of people also don't realize that Flex was given an invitation, and he wasn't automatically, people could assume that the 212 champion, because he's an Olympia champion, also allows them to do the open. And obviously you're making that very clear. That's not the case. That's an
But the
invitation.
Flex Lewis topic is interesting because a lot of people have said things to us like, well, of course he should be able to compete. He's won 7 212 titles, which, by the way, is an all-time record, makes Flex Lewis one of the most popular, respected bodybuilders in the world. He's a good friend. We all love Flex.
Absolutely.
The reality is this: we can't gloss over the fact that Flex Lewis, to win those 212 titles, does not have to defeat men named Brandon Curry and Phil Heath and Dexter Jackson. He does not have to defeat men named Big Ramy and William Bonac to win those titles. So as much as we respect those 7 212 victories, and to take nothing away from those titles, because Flex Lewis is an absolute rock star in this sport, and we want him on our stage, make no mistake about it. But even Flex himself would concede that point. He has not done the things that these guys who are competing in the big Mr. Olympia division have done, right? So it's something that we kind of struggled with, but we felt in this particular case it was appropriate because of his 7 titles. So
absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. Speaking of the I guess I want to say, is this backwards compatible? Like, can one of the Olympia winners from the past go back and would that qualify them for the Olympia? And this might be something where more of a question for Jim Mannion, but I'm just curious because that's a question that I can't even answer. And I know a lot of scenarios because they go through my head with either my athletes or things that I've seen in the past. But if you have, like, let's say Dexter Jackson, who's been competing forever, and he says, hey man, I want to throw some board shorts on it. Can I just go in there? Would that be an automatic qualification, or would that be an invite situation? And again, I'm making this up, guys. This is not like something that Dexter's planning on doing. I'm just wondering if it, what the official stance is on that.
Yeah, so, and you are right. It is definitely a question for Tyler Mannion or Jim Mannion. But I will say this: when we started expanding divisions years ago, remember there was that crossover thing where, like, a guy like Silvio Samuel could enter in. Back then they called it the under 210 division, and he was able to compete in that division and then stay on stage and compete in the open division. And I think he even won both titles one year doing that in I think in a Europa show. But then over the years, what happened is these divisions started to really become more individually identified, right? It was almost becoming, like, if you're a bikini athlete or you're a classic physique athlete, it almost became insulting to the division to just say, yeah, you can go ahead and compete in there because you're already a pro. I think these divisions have taken on a life of their own where it's almost disrespectful to the division. I remember once Kim Krzyzewski competed, a former Miss Olympia champion, many times over, decided to try her hand at fitness, if you guys recall.
I do.
Yeah, and so she did that. I don't know if that can happen today, though. I think that rule has changed. And again, those rules are laid down by the Pro League, so I would defer to them. But I do not think that would continue today, especially as competitive as those divisions have become. It would almost be unnatural, and to think of a guy like Dexter Jackson competing in any other division, right? I mean,
yeah, because you always think about, and you have all these people that hit me up and they ask me questions. They go, well, once you're qualified for the Mr. Olympia, it means anybody can do the Mr. Olympia that's won it in the past, right, Hany? And I said, yeah. And they said, so Arnold could jump on the Olympia stage. I go, theoretically, yeah. I mean, he's
sent in his IFBB Pro League, his
$250.
membership fee.
Yep.
I would imagine that, yes, if Arnold wanted to compete in the Olympia, he would be qualified for life, just like any other former Olympia champion. And wouldn't we all love to see that? By the way, shout out to Arnold. I know Arnold's
absolutely,
and I hear he's doing great. So hopefully he's feeling better.
Yeah, so if he's feeling really good, give me a call, Arnold. We'll prep you for the show next year. We're wishing you a very quick recovery because he had just gotten a heart procedure done. He got a valve replacement. And the great news is on his social media, he's been going around town. I believe he's in Cleveland, Ohio, and he's gotten a surgery that is very invasive and he's been recovering at a great pace. So we want to, give our best wishes and in a quick recovery for Arnold. Going back into the Olympia, I guess my question for you now is, where do you see the Olympia in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so the Olympia in the next 5 years will evolve much the same way the overall global fitness world has evolved. And like, for example, this year had everything gone normally. The Olympia Expo, as we know it, was rebranded and it was being reproduced as the Olympia World Fitness Festival. The plan was to incorporate all the various components of the overall fitness and healthy living, um, subsections of the world, which has grown in many ways, and to sort of bring them to life at the Olympia in ways that it had never been presented. So I think a big part of it is making sure that Olympia weekend reflects sort of how the world has evolved from its passion for living a fit lifestyle. I think you'll also see more visibility. I think we're starting to reconvene our focus to getting the Olympia its proper coverage. We have a lot of relationships throughout media, throughout network television that we're trying to tap, and we're going to try to do some things to make sure that our champions are household names just the same way other sports are. And I know those promises have been made over the years, and to a lot of people, it almost becomes something that they heard for many years that the Olympia was going to be on NBC, and they heard this and they heard that, and those things prior to my arrival in this position.
Dan, can I ask you a quick question on that? Because I want to, that was what, 5-6 years ago, maybe a little bit more. Whatever happened with that? What's the backstory of it? It was advertised it was going to be on NBC, and then it just crickets.
Yeah. So
What was that?
of course, that was long before my arrival in this role. But what I had heard, and this is speculation, that whatever was produced, whatever the footage looked like, it wasn't something that the network really wanted to get behind. And in the end, they decided that they didn't want to give it a home. And again, there might be other components to that I wasn't privy to. There could be a business side. I usually find that when there's things that we don't really understand, there's some back office business component that explains it quickly. And that might be the case here. So I'm not going to overly speculate. But I was told from some folks who seem to know that a lot of it had to do with the way the event was shot and the way it looked, and it just wasn't something that NBC felt good about. And it was such a tough day for me because I remember Bob Ciccarello and I were in Texas at an NBC event, and it was the day that was supposed to air.
Mm-hmm.
And we got back to our hotel room, or to one of our hotel rooms, and we went up there and we were all excited. It was like we had the popcorn popping and we were getting ready to watch the Olympia. And it was actually on the schedule like that. It was going to be on. And we got there in front of the television, and an antique car auction came on instead. And it was like a scene out of Beavis and Butthead. Like Bob and I just looked at each other and we were just like what's happening here? Like it was almost like the joke was on us because we were so excited that it was going to be a glorious day for the bodybuilding world, that we were going to get to watch all of our favorite athletes in the Olympia on NBC. And so apparently an antique car auction was more appealing to NBC than the Mr. Olympia was back in 2015 or whatever it was. So that was a humbling, disappointing day. And I can tell you this, that's not going to happen again. If we put a deal together, it'll get on. And the good news is there's a lot of people. I know Danny and Dwayne would love to see that happen. And I know Shaq would love to see that happen. And a lot of people that I work with in media, we've had conversations about trying to make that happen. So you talk about the future, I can tell you that things are going to really happen that are going to excite the fan base and going to introduce this great sport to a lot of people that might not be aware of it. And that's really the objective.
No, absolutely. I think that's the number one thing that I think the athletes would love to see. And speaking for some of the athletes that I know that want to be able to be branded a little bit more in the old regime, they were always asking for, hey, can I get my personal brand pushed as I'm getting ready for the Olympia, or, I'm representing the title or whatever it is, that they wanted to be able to do those things. And once in a while we got to see some stuff on Sports Center and whatnot. And I think that, again, there's a lot of back office business and that's tied into things to allow for those type of opportunities to happen so that you can end up on Sports Center or, some type of ESPN type of, late night that they were doing. I was excited because I got to see some of that, but it kind of fizzled in, fizzled out. And we used to watch bodybuilding, as you know, back in the day, and it used to be on ESPN with Sean Ray, and you'd see all the different greats that were on there, Lee Hany, and it was awesome. And then that kind of went away. And now it's just like, I guess, what's the next step out of that evolution? Do you think it's going to ever be like that again? Or do you think it's something that has to evolve in a different way?
Well, it is evolving. Look, remember, the way people consume media is different now than it used to be. So, you could argue that we've actually evolved from that, because the truth is, you start to look at the audience reach of our competitors. You have guys like Phil Heath in the show who have 5, 6, 7 million followers across his social channels. And then you have other folks that are involved even at the middle and lower tier of the competition that have significant social media reach. And they're all doing their part to connect with their fan bases and to talk about training and nutrition and dieting and motivation and inspiration. And so a lot of that stuff is happening. It's no longer an apples for apples conversation, right? Like, we can't compare what was happening in 1990 versus what's happening today, because the way things are consumed and produced is just different now. So you could argue that more people consumed and experienced fitness and bodybuilding today than any day in 1990, just because, I've talked about this on a few occasions, even during the pandemic, during the lockdown. All of these members of the fitness industry, guys like you, other influencers, bodybuilders, fitness celebrities, they were taking to their social media and they were giving out free training advice. People were transforming their bedrooms into gyms. They were inspiring, motivating, providing very cathartic information aimed at helping regular folks who were just trying to lose weight or stay sane to kind of get through all this. And that was a very exciting thing, I think, for a lot of us to see the way. And they weren't doing it for any money either. They were just out there. They were sharing recipes and they were sharing workouts and they were showing how you could, get a bicep pump by just using a phone book or whatever it was. They were constantly showing different ways to bring FST7 into your living room. And,
Exactly.
and it's a really exciting thing. And I credit folks like you and others who really stepped up and provided that value. So for people who are saying, I hope it gets back to the way it was, it's not a comparison anymore. It's gotten back. It's just different the way the message is being put out there. And I'm very proud of the way our industry kind of, represented during a really important time. And I always say, if the quarantine had happened 15 years ago, fitness, training, health would have been the furthest thing from anybody's mind. But here in 2020, that was the first thing. Every piece of workout equipment was sold out by May 1st across the country. You couldn't buy a 25-pound dumbbell. You couldn't get it anywhere. So the fact that we've kind of evolved to that place, I think, speaks to how far we've come.
Yeah, it was like worth its weight in gold, literally. Going into the Olympia this year, what are you most excited to see? I know that you're excited because you have some really cool matchups, but what aspect of the lineup are you most excited about?
So for starters, Hany, I'm glad we got to this part of the interview, because you and I, first, I want to pay you a compliment for a second, and I know you don't mind taking them, so I'm going to give you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You and I have had a long run together. We've been at this for a long time, doing very different things. You've had great success in what you do, and I've been doing the things that I do. But it seems like you have managed to be attached on some level to many of the biggest stories that we've all had the privilege to follow. And in my former life, on the media side, covering this thing as a host and all the stuff that I used to do before I took this position, whether it was the iconic run of the great Ronnie Coleman, or whether it was...
Well, I was a part of that run because I was close to him on the business side, but not on the training side.
Absolutely. And I know you've never represented that you trained Ronnie. You're very careful about that now.
Yes, absolutely.
You were always attached on some level to the Ronnie story. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of follow that up with some of the other athletes, male and female, that you've worked with. And then, of course, the Phil Heath story, which is one that we all continue to follow with great reverence and interest. And the fact that, and it's funny because I jumped to Phil and I skipped past maybe the one that's bigger than all of them. And that's the Jay Cutler story, where Jay Cutler loses the title in 2008 to Dexter Jackson. People just assume that he's done. He links up with you and ends up doing something that nobody in the history of bodybuilding has ever done. After losing the Olympia title, managed to reclaim the title, win it back. You, of course, worked with Jay. Jay credits you. You credit Jay. That was a great team. You guys did it 2 years in a row. What a huge, exciting story that was. And then, of course, you rolled right into the Phil Heath era, and you've been a central part of the Phil Heath narrative for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, or however long it's been. And
15, but who's counting?
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes by quickly, doesn't it?
It does.
But yeah, so credit to you for sort of being a central focus. And now the cool part about it is you start talking about the storylines that I'm following this year, and now you can see I'm getting excited because we talked about the thing that you were able to help Jay Cutler achieve that had never been achieved. You're trying to help Phil Heath do that same thing. If Phil Heath is successful in winning this year's Olympia, he will have, in fact, not only tied the all-time record, but he will have become the second man to win the title back after having lost it on the Olympia stage. So that's an exciting storyline. I think the other storyline that I really get behind is the Hany storyline. He's good, man. That's a hell of a bodybuilder you got there. And I know the fans over in Iran and that whole entire region have really gotten behind him. And I'm so happy to see that because they're a tremendously passionate fan base. As you and I have talked about, Hany, you've actually explained it to me that they're some of the most passionate, hardcore bodybuilding fans in the world. And seeing Hany make his way over here to the U.S., and we're hoping everything works out and he's able to safely and successfully get here, to see him compete for the title, because I've talked to a lot of people who felt that he actually made a case to win that title last year. So yeah, there's some really good storylines this year. And what can't be lost is the return of the Miss Olympia this year. After a 5 or 6 year layoff, these ladies are so excited and so dedicated to making this Miss Olympia return epic. And Iris Kyle's back. And
yeah, she's a legend, man. I mean, Iris is just, I mean, she's synonymous with the Olympia. I mean, winning all the titles that she has, and her being able to come back and being able to go against the new blood. It's going to be really, really interesting. I can't wait to see that.
Good. And so what's really great is, all these divisions, the other divisions that this bikini division has really taken on a life of its own. It's interesting. And I've gotten to know the division a little bit better this year. I've started to try to reach out and connect with some of the competitors, try to understand some of the rivalries. And it's a very difficult sport to articulate because the difference between the winner of the bikini division and the 5th place finisher is by far the narrowest of any of the divisions, right?
100%. 100%.
Very, very difficult. But what I've come to also understand, and I don't think I really appreciated this because I've gotten to know a couple of the Bikini Olympia contenders this year, and I will tell you that they train as hard, if not harder, with more dedication than any of the divisions. And I'm not saying they train harder than any divisions. Let me be careful with what I say. But they train as hard as almost any of these other divisions. These girls are in the gym as long as any Mr. Olympia competitor is in the gym. You know this because you work with some of them. And so that's the part that I'm excited about. We have a tremendously exciting bikini division show, Bikini Olympia showdown, and Physique Olympia. The Wheelchair Olympia is really exciting this year, so we definitely are excited for that. And
what about the Classic? What
a great division that's turned out to be, and the look of
C-Bum versus Breon. I know that they were going, at it online a little bit, create a little bit of little sparks for flying.
I love it. I love that division. I love the men's and the women's physique divisions. The fitness division, I always feel like be careful about glossing past it because they're the ones who actually do things that are really worth the price of admission, right? Because they go on, they prepare, and they do these incredible routines. And the 212 division, let's not forget that. That's we have a great returning champion in Kamal Agarni coming back, and I know Derek's got his eyes on that prize, and there's a bunch of other 212 contenders that I know are in the mix. So you can be sure that on both Friday and Saturday night at the Olympia, there's going to be a lot to justify the price of admission for sure.
Is there a format change? I mean, being that now, I guess physically, is the prejudging going to be in the same spot in that same theater as the night show? And is everything just basically, because I know you moved everything to one.
Yeah. So as of right now, they are not in the same theater. But what's crazy about all these rules as it relates to head counts and limitations, every theater and every venue based on its raw capacity has different percentages and head count maximums. So we're constantly assessing which venue puts us in the best chance to have the most fans. So right now we have our idea of where everything's going to be, and the format itself won't change. But remember, we're not having a full-blown expo this year. So that changes things in terms of, it doesn't change the schedule, but it changes things in terms of the way we have to build this weekend. So there are some changes, and it's kind of a fluid process. And we're really hopeful that within the next week or two, we can be at a place where we can really announce with real clarity and definity how that schedule is going to look. But yeah, there's so many variables to all of that right now.
So just to wrap up, are tickets still available right now?
Yeah, so it's funny you should ask that. So what we did was we actually suspended ticket sales for the Saturday night portion of the event, because our biggest fear is we don't want to oversell the event where we got to start contacting ticket buyers and say, hey, we can't have you there. So, like I said, our VIP tickets have already sold out. The Saturday night has sold enough where we had to suspend tickets there. The Friday night tickets are still on sale because Friday night always sells a little slower than Saturday night. So you can still go on and buy Friday night seats at Ticketmaster. MrOlympia.com, of course, has the ticket sales links. It also has the links to the great discounted rooms at Planet Hollywood. And it also has links to merchandise and all the other stuff that we talked about at the top of the show. But right now, we're really not pushing for ticket sales because
well, let's talk about pay-per-view. Is there going to be a pay-per-view option, Dan?
So there will be. This year's Olympia will be on pay-per-view, and I'll give Jake great credit for that because Jake has really championed taking the pay-per-view to a whole new level. So there's going to be different viewing options, different channels, different camera angles, many things that are going to really provide a heightened experience. We realize that a lot of people who are used to being at the Olympia this year, for obvious reasons, have chosen not to make the trip. So we're trying to create an environment where fans can really experience the Olympia in a whole new way. We're going to have a paid channel. We're also going to have a free channel that's going to provide access to being able to watch the press conference and other parts of the weekend as soon as we get confirmation that everything is full go. But
you got prices yet? Have you confirmed prices, Dan?
We haven't confirmed prices, but people are going to be pleased. We're making them very affordable, and we're just committed to making this. It's funny. My preference and our preference has always been to just do a straight free webcast because we want to make sure that as many people can watch it as possible. But this year, for obvious reasons, look, we're not able to sell the number of exhibitor booths as we could in the past. We're not able to sell tickets. So there is a business component, and we are still honoring our prize money commitments. We're still giving away well north of $1 million.
Oh, so I wasn't clear on that. So that gets settled. It is going to be, that's all been locked in.
We are committed to going full blown on our prize money, which I think if you want to know, people always ask about Jake. I will tell you this. The fact that we're talking about committing to our full prize money levels in a year like this, where we can't sell nearly the tickets we're normally allowed to sell, we can't sell nearly the exhibitor booths that we're normally allowed to sell, not even close. And there's countless other ways that we cannot generate revenue that we normally do. And the fact that our new owner is still committed to the prize money, that says everything you need to know about Jake and his commitment to doing right by the athletes.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, to be able to have a year where with all of the different financial struggles, like you said, ticket sales, booth, this, that, all those other things are going to be, that revenue is all going to be down. So for those fans out there, if you are into bodybuilding at all and you're going to watch the Olympia or you're going to be interested at all, again, I'm not just saying this because this is my industry. I'm saying this because this is my passion. And this is where you really need to step up a little bit. And again, it sounds like you're going to make it very reasonable. And I'm saying this because this helps the whole industry go round. This revenue helps trickle down. Jake is not cutting back to help. You're helping the actual athletes as well by buying the pay-per-view. So really, if you're going to get behind the bodybuilding community at any point, now's the time. Whether it's this show, whether it's I know the Nationals are coming up. These are the shows. I don't know if they have a pay-per-view for Nationals this year, but are going out there. But being able to really step up, and support these different promoters, now's the time to do it. Because in the heyday, everybody was doing, they were like going to a show every weekend. There was like 20 shows going on every weekend. But now's the time where you guys really getting behind things and getting behind those athletes, whether it's Phil you love or you hate or this guy or that. It's really about the industry and being able to support the industry. And so go after those people that you really like and support them. Buy their merch. Take care of them. click on their links. It really means a lot, especially now during during a pandemic that's going on. For the last one was 100 years ago, and it really makes a difference. So I just want to put that public service announcement out there to do whatever you can, because if you're listening to this, chances are you are a fan of bodybuilding, listening to iTunes, the podcast, or watching my YouTube channel, and it really means a lot to really step up right now.
I'm glad you said that, Hany, because positivity is the key. This has been a very complicated, challenging year for ways that go so far beyond bodybuilding and people's personal lives. Relationships have been impacted, jobs have been impacted, people's ability to pay their rent or their mortgage have been impacted. It's been a very trying time in the world, and I appreciate you for keeping the message positive, and for all the fans who have kind of expressed that positivity. And if you're somebody who's quick to go out there and put out some criticism, and maybe revisit it, maybe take a breath and realize that right now we all need to be positive. We need to come together. We need to reunite. We need to remember why we all got into this in the first place. And I see a lot of hate out there. I see a lot of negativity. And I just hope that we can get to a place where we can really start to embrace what this is all about, and be positive. And Hany, it's been fun sort of being along this journey with you over the many years you've been doing this. And congratulations really on all your success. I know when you and I kind of started doing this, we were just trying to figure it out and figure our way around. And I've seen you have great success with your Evogen supplement brand, and the success you're having with athletes around the world who are lined up for an opportunity to spend 5 minutes talking to you on the phone about contest prep or nutrition, or just an opportunity to work with you. I know that's been really gratifying. People come up to me all the time and they always say, I'd love the chance to work with some of the world's best coaches. And I'd say I'd give you Hany Rambod's phone number, but he's busy. He probably won't even have time to call you back at this point. But you really deserve a lot of credit for kind of reinventing yourself and doing the work. And I know there's a lot of athletes around the world that are in your debt for the work that you've done to sort of help them along the way. And we're excited to see you and everybody out there in Vegas in December. And it's a year that we're looking forward to having the event, but we're also looking forward to this year being in the rearview mirror so we can start focusing on 2021.
Absolutely. Well, with that said, thank you so much for all the accolades. And I want to say thanks for your time. I know you're super busy, so I appreciate you taking the time out to be able to come on the Truth Podcast. For those of you that have not yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, you comment, let us know what you think about the podcast, as well as any guests you'd like to see coming forward. And again, don't forget to turn on your notification bell. I'm Hany Rambod, Dan Solomon, and that's the truth.